As soon as our difficulties are restored, we will return you to our regularly scheduled program.
Let's take it from the top.
It's Peter Tilden.
At 10!
Good morning. It is Peter Tilden at 10, part 2, the 11 o'clock hour, of course. A bunch of legal issues to discuss today, stories that are breaking in news. I thought we'd check in with Brian Claypool. He's an attorney. Of course, you know that litigation and civil rights law represented those clients in the Miramonte Elementary School molestation case. How are you, Brian?
Great, Peter. Before we start, Donald Trump should be courting Sarah Palin. He needs a woman.
You think? It's going to be interesting to see. First off, the vice presidential picks don't mean that much, except when they can hurt you more than they can help you. So it's going to be interesting to see the vetting process there. Are you going away? You doing anything over the 4th? Anything fun, or you just you're working?
Well, I'm actually in a mediation right now on a case that I'm going to mention when we talk about your legal stories. But I might go to Las Vegas for a day or two. But I'll come back early on the 4th. So I could see the fireworks in Pasadena where I live. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Well, you're a human being, and I like you a lot, and you're smart. Let me ask you the first question. Businesses that ask job applicants, and if you'd like to participate in this, you can call me, 800-222-5222, especially if you're a business owner. Businesses that ask job applicants about their criminal history during the hiring process could be fined and forced to pay the applicant up to $500 under a new law being considered by the city. So City Council had a committee, and they backed the plan to penalize businesses that weed out applicants based on criminal convictions. And I get that. You want to give people maybe to lower recidivism, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And it's called Ban the Box Ordinance, and it means you check that box that said you have a criminal history. My question for you, so I'm reading it, and exemptions, of course, happen for child care or law enforcement. Nonprofits, churches, and other groups support the law right now, but some people are against it. My question is this. If this goes through, and I run a business, and I can't ask you that in hiring you, and then I hire you, and then you commit the exact crime that you've done 3 times before that I couldn't ask you about, can I seek remedy from the city and say, you banned me from asking about his criminal activity, which impacts my business, my life, the safety of my employees. This guy just stabbed my employee. If I'd known this stuff, I could have prevented this. Your fault.
Right.
What's the liability there?
Well, Peter, I think you missed your calling. You should have been a lawyer, okay? Because you just stole my thunder. That is precisely the problem with this proposed bill that the City Council is going to put forward. And I love Eric Garcetti. He's a friend. I fully support Eric Garcetti in his reelection. But if he signs this, a colossal mistake for exactly the reason you just mentioned. Let's say hypothetically, I've got a case right now. I'm here on a mediation with a case involving Yellow Cab. Okay, it's a private company, so it would be subject to this new law. In other words, if a new cab driver comes in,
oh boy, Yellow
Cab wouldn't be required or wouldn't be allowed to ask any background questions on this cab driver. And now I've got a case where there's an allegation of molestation by the cab driver. So think about this, hypothetically. Let's not even talk about molestation. Let's talk about if the prospective cab driver had previously been convicted of assault, and Yellow Cab's not allowed to ask about that.
Right.
And then they hire this driver, and the driver gets in a fight and beats the crap out of a passenger for whatever reason. We've seen it with Uber.
Absolutely.
And Yellow Cab gets sued, and they say, well, wait a minute. I couldn't find out whether this guy had a propensity for doing that because this ridiculous law precludes me from doing it. Now, that raises the question you're getting at, which is, could the city then be somehow financially responsible for that civil tort? And I would argue it's possible. So every taxpayer out there in Los Angeles and everyone listening to your show needs to be paying attention to this law.
I would think so. You know, I'm reading this and I'm thinking, am I off? You have all these guys now fighting for fingerprinting Uber drivers and background checks on drivers. So how does that work with this? I'm Uber, and you're fighting for me to do more extensive background checks to find out what? Something that I'm not allowed to use in hiring?
Right. You're exactly right.
Why are we even doing background checks? Why are we doing background checks? They should be unconstitutional too, because unless he's an active criminal, but if he served and I found out something that maybe I shouldn't have known. So I don't get that.
Yeah. I agree with it. It's completely at odds with what everybody's clamoring about, which is, I was recently in Austin, Texas. I go to Austin a lot. In Austin, the city there actually denied Uber a license to even provide service in the city of Austin. I don't know if you heard about this. Uber is not allowed in the city of Austin because they will not do background checks of drivers. And now we've got Los Angeles. Look at the converse of Austin. We now have the city of Los Angeles saying, it's okay. We're not even going to allow you. If
you do, you're fine. You're going to get fined. You're going to be penalized for doing it. Right. We are in a really.
Right.
Did no one at City Council stand up and say this? Wow.
Yeah, and the bigger thing, I said, look, I'm with you. I work in civil rights too. I work with I work with guys and women that have been incarcerated. I'm all for giving people a second chance. With that said, though, it's a balancing test. You need to know as an employer on an application, for example, have you been convicted of a crime? You might. I think there's a balance here.
Yep.
You should still be able to ask, have you been convicted of a crime? An employer has a duty and a moral obligation to find that information out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I would sue. I tell you what, I would sue the city if somebody went off in my business and I wasn't allowed to ask. I would say your fault. We could have prevented this. Well, insane. You're right. The dichotomy here is nuts. Let's move on because I know that you've represented elementary school kids in horrific cases, but this is an interesting case, and it's all over the news today because it's a 9-year-old. It was the end-of-year class party at a school in Collingswood, New Jersey. Third grader made a comment about the brownies being served to the class. He may have made, oh, you're a brownie. I don't know the comment, but he's 9 years old. So another student says the remark is racist. Based on that, they call the Collingswood Police Department. Police officer comes in with the gun, the whole bit, talks to the kid. The school, the mom's saying, is overreacted. His father was contacted by the police later in the day. They said the incident has now been referred to the New Jersey Division of Child Protection and Permanency. She said, I'm pulling my kid out of the school. His father was a graduate. I have other kids who are graduates of that school. I can't do this anymore. Why would a police officer come? And I'm asking you because you've dealt with the school so often. Does this have to do with the fact that the schools are so nervous now about how to handle stuff like here in LAUSD with this suspensions are down because they want to do the restorative justice thing? So now you have classrooms that are less productive. But is that what this is about? It's a handoff. It's easier just to hand it over to the police, let them deal with it, because we don't know what the parameters are anymore of punishment?
I think that's a great point. I think, having been in the trenches in the Miramonte case, remember, we fought for 3.5 years on that case.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, a byproduct of Miramonte and is nationwide now, where if there's any potential issue involving safety of a child, or for example, a report by or racial like a racial issue or a safety issue. It's almost like school districts now will kind of just rub their hands together, wash their hands, and call law enforcement or call DCFS, because what the districts are doing is they're trying to safeguard themselves now from any potential liability. And think about it hypothetically. If they don't do anything then, and there's a lawsuit later, then that can be used against them. In other words, their omission, their failure to act can be used against the district in a civil case. So I think they might be overreacting a bit, but put yourself in their shoes now. Given this, all these cases of abuse. I mean, Sandusky, Miramonte, the Archdiocese. I mean, these school districts are on high alert now. So I really can't blame them.
I read it and I thought teachers just want to teach, and I know I could open up the phones and take calls from teachers all day who don't want to have to deal with this disruptive behavior with the listening circles and trying to figure out what to do, and they're not all trained to do that, and it doesn't always work. And if it doesn't, you get a disruptive classroom because of one student who was disruptive. It's easier to call the law and say, I did it, it's out of my hands, deal with it, you write up the report, here's what happened, I'm going back to teaching my class.
Absolutely, and you make another good point. I've taken tons of depositions of administrators of school districts, and I always ask them, what kind of training have you gotten in safeguarding kids and detecting child abuse and on racial issues, they usually get like 1 or 2 hours a year online. I mean, that's really the standard. So you're right.
You leave yourself open. I would be calling you, Brian, and saying, I don't know what to do. I'm in the classroom right now, Brian. What do I do? Do I defer to here? Do I do that? Do I hire a lawyer? It's really become an awful situation for teachers. And they don't have the support because the administration will bail on them in a minute. Last question. I had Larry Miller from Sit and Sleep brought this up. A friend of mine yesterday, happened right here while I was doing a show. Somebody's wife got a call and freaked out. Here's the call, and I want to know legally why we can't stop them. Here's what one of them sounds like. Ready?
An enforcement action executed by the U.S. Treasury, intending your serious attention. Ignoring this will be an intentional second attempt to avoid initial appearance before a magistrate judge or a grand jury for a federal criminal offense. This is the final attempt to reach you. To resolve this issue immediately and to speak to a federal agent, call back number 301. I repeat, 301. Thank you.
So there you go. I've gotten those. I noticed there are tons of them now. I bet you've gotten them, and people freak out, especially older people. Immigrants who don't know, if you have a landline, you're usually older because they don't do cell phones. Why can't they remedy that? Why can't they shut those down?
Well, first of all, believe it or not, I got my law firm got one the other day. My secretary, I'm in a deposition. She calls me up and says, "The IRS just called you and they're going to sue you." And I'm like, "What?"
It's amazing.
During a break, I'm like, "Don't worry about it." But then during a break, I'm like emailing my accountant. Is this true? Can this happen? One of those robocalls.
And they know how to push the buttons. They're really good at the fear element.
Yeah, but getting back to your question, I think the big issue now with this is putting the burden on the phone service providers, T-Mobile, AT&T. They need to come up with, and there is some software out there to try to ameliorate these phone calls. And I think the shifting in legislation has to be to put some of this burden on these phone providers. I mean, if you want to make billions of dollars on us consumers with the phones, then you should have an obligation to try to preempt this problem when your customers are repeatedly being harassed and the law is being violated.
With fraud. They're huge fraud calls. One department said since October 2013, they've gotten reports of almost 896,000 of these, with 5,000 victims who paid more than $26.5 million they've been defrauded from. That's awful. That's horrible. It's
that's horrible. But a lot of your listeners may not know there is software out there. I even read about 2 or 3 that could be utilized. Why aren't our major phone carriers putting a little bit of money into this and installing that and to try to prevent this?
I agree.
It's a more profound issue.
And smart people like your secretary, I'm sure, is smart. She freaked out, right? Your assistant.
Yeah, exactly. She was like, yeah. And then we called. By the way, she called back. I'm like, I was curious, Peter. I'm like, call back and find. She didn't get a live voice. Boy, I'll tell you, she got a live voice. Very unsavory individual that was saying horrible things to her. I mean, it got worse. My point is, it got worse.
So wait a minute. It was the IRS. So what that means, she did get the IRS.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, look, your new calling is either a lawyer or a comedian.
Exactly. There you go.
That was good.
And by the way, when you call them back, what they're trying to do at that point is get your Social Security number and get you to give your Visa number to get some money. And it's phishing too. The number that shows up when they call you is a fake number. It could even look like an IRS number. So don't ever.
That's a great point. It's coming up as a legitimate number. Yep. It's not coming up like unknown. Like on my cell, if I see an unknown call, I'm not going to get it. It's coming up as a real number. But a lot of folks don't realize that number is a fake number.
You got it. Well, you know what? Because I'm like the Eskimo when I use the whole animal, you got a minute and a half left. You ready? Street performers are saying in L.A. now that they may have to pick a number, get in there early, and they only can use X amount of street performers, so it's not overwhelming in Hollywood. So if you're Batman and you don't get there early, they may only do 20 street performers, and you're out of the lottery that day. And they're saying they may sue because it may be a limitation of the right to assembly and also their freedom of speech right. That sounds a little bit pushed.
Yeah, I fall in the middle on this one, Peter, because I read one of the articles where the owner of Hard Rock Cafe was like, "Well, imagine if you were a business owner and you had 2 unclad women that were like right near the front of your door. Families aren't going to come in." My counter to that is, dude, look, if it wasn't for a lot of these performers out there on Hollywood Boulevard, you wouldn't be having a zillion people walking down that street every day.
Exactly right.
So it's a balancing test. I think the city's on the right track. I think what you do is you limit, for example, the proposed. I think it's enforced now. I think they limit you from 5 feet from the entrance of a business or from the entrance to a subway. You can't be right next to the street
right,
where people are spilling out into the street. So it really is a safety issue, and I think it's a good balancing test. The only thing I have a little trouble with is they're limiting it. I think to 20 people a day that can get a daily pass to be on Hollywood Boulevard. I'm not sure. I think that's a bit arbitrary. But I think the concept in general is a good one.
Pretty smart. And when you had me at Scantily Clad or Naked Women, I just flipped sides already.
I was going to be like, what's the address of that Hard Rock Cafe?
Why am I getting SpongeBob? What is that about? Brian, if you travel, be safe. Thank you so much for it's always a joy having you on. Litigation Civil Rights Law represented the clients in the Miramonte case, and it's ClaypoolLawFirm.com. His Twitter is @Brian_Claypool. And don't call the office if you're saying you're the IRS, because they're on to you.
Yeah.
Brian.
Hey, happy 4th, Peter.
Yeah, you too, man. Be
man.
safe. Everybody be safe.
All right,
you take it easy. We'll take some of your calls. Also going to talk